It was not easy being a Spartan. From the moment you entered this world as a boy until the moment you passed away, people watched your every move. People saw you as a powerful war machine, a reliable worker, and the sole purpose of your existence was to fight for your country. In essence, even when you weren't actively fighting, you were constantly preparing for battle. So, what was the typical Spartan's daily routine like? Let's explore that today. But before we dive in, here's a brief reminder. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe to Reality Threads and let us know in the comments which strange historical civilization you'd like us to investigate next. Now, imagine you're in Sparta. Babies born into the Spartan state were immediately subject to observation. Shortly after birth, they underwent rigorous inspections by the Gerousia, a council of prominent elder Spartans. If a newborn was deemed cognitively or physically impaired or unwell, he was considered useless to the Spartan army. You may have heard that these babies were abandoned at Mount Taygetus or thrown into the abyss, but they were probably left in the woods or hills. Occasionally, villagers would find and take them in, but most of the time, the babies perished from exposure. For the boys who passed the Gerousia's inspection, their journey to becoming warriors began. Instead of immersing them in water, they did so in tubs of wine. The belief was that the wine would make them more resilient. The weaker children would pass out from convulsions. They also learned not to fear darkness or solitude. No one comforted them when they cried or made noise. This harsh training continued until they turned 7. The first 6 years of a Spartan boy's life were grueling, but compared to what followed, they were the best years. The state took control at the age of 7, thrusting the boys into the heart of military training. The paedonomos, also known as boy herders, took care of them from the age of 7 to 17, enrolling them in the agoge. This system was the foundation of Spartan military education. They were known as the pediskoi from 17 to 19, and by 20, they became the Habantes. During the early years in the agoge, Spartan youths underwent intense training. Over 10 years, they learned hunting, hand-to-hand combat, and war strategy, turning them into fierce warriors. While Spartan men trained for battle, Spartan women focused on ensuring the next generation would be strong. They didn't undergo the same rigorous training, but were taught gymnastics, dance, and javelin throwing. There was no pressure on Spartan women to fight, but their role in producing healthy, robust offspring was vital. Spartan women were unique in ancient Greece, enjoying freedoms unmatched by other Greek women. They lived independently, were allowed to acquire and inherit property, and had access to more education. Outsiders often viewed Spartan women as overbearing and promiscuous due to their high level of autonomy. As for the boys, the state did not take newborn girls for military training. Instead, girls were returned to their mothers after birth. While they didn't train for combat, they were raised with strict exercise and nutrition routines to grow into healthy mothers who could bear strong children. They were taught to be as strong as the boys preparing for war, though they were not trained to fight. On the other hand, Spartan girls' physical education focused on developing skills like riding, wrestling, running, discus and javelin throwing, and strength training. It all made sense in the end. Since serving the Spartan army was the one and only goal of Spartan society, warriors refrained from excessive drinking. A soldier who couldn't fight effectively was useless. As a result, Spartan warriors made sure their enslaved people avoided heavy drinking from an early age. Occasionally, soldiers would overindulge and turn their slaves into violent criminals. The warriors would strip the intoxicated slaves, parading them in front of local children for their amusement. Intoxication in Spartan society was seen as a sign of weakness. While a glass of wine at dinner was acceptable, staying in top shape was essential for any Spartan soldier. A disciplined approach to drinking ensured that only the strongest would survive the toughest battles. Even as a young Spartan, you were under constant scrutiny. A red cloak was the only clothing item that every aspiring soldier wore annually. The purpose of the cloak was to prevent the boys from gaining excess weight. If you were overweight and couldn't figure out how to fit into your cloak, the solution was simple: exercise and eat less. These young men didn't receive their first pair of shoes until they joined the military. Even during snowstorms, they were required to go barefoot. They were trained to harden the soles of their feet, making them able to march for miles in any weather. To promote athletic physiques, the mess halls deliberately offered just enough food to keep the boys somewhat hungry. In fact, if a young Spartan was found to be overweight, exile was a real possibility. While Spartan men could marry, life remained rigid. Marriage ensured a steady birth rate, which meant a constant supply of young men for the military. However, men had to live in barracks until they reached the age of 30 if married men wanted to spend time with their families. They had to sneak away at night. If they were caught sneaking out, they would be beaten, not because they broke the rules, but because they got caught. These young men were notorious for their careless mistakes, and as a result, the beatings were constant. What a strange bunch the Spartans were. Unlike their Athenian counterparts who focused on philosophy and the arts, the Spartans cared about only one thing: becoming the best warriors they could be. Philosophy, art, and intellectual pursuits had no place in their world. That said, the Spartans still educated their people. The main objectives of their training were to improve mental resilience, physical fitness, and military strategy. Even though Spartan girls weren't required to serve in the military, they still went through combat training. The boys were subjected to regular beatings as part of their discipline. This harsh treatment ensured their constant vigilance and helped them develop strength and resilience. At times, military officials would even create fights among the boys to see who the strongest were, eliminating the weaker ones in the process. The Spartans would treat any youngster with contempt, and sometimes violence, if they showed any signs of weakness. One of the most brutal strategies in Spartan society was deliberately underfeeding the boys to encourage them to steal food. This wasn't done because stealing was the goal, but because the Spartans believed the boys would learn important lessons from their failures. If they were caught, they suffered harsh punishments, not for the theft itself, but for being naive enough to think they could get away with it. This underfeeding strategy was also believed to create tougher, more resilient soldiers, rather than soft, overweight ones. By adapting to constant hunger, Spartan boys were prepared for the hardships they would face in battle, where hunger wouldn't be as much of an issue. Ancient Sparta, like many societies, had significant socioeconomic disparities. It had a rigid caste system designed to maintain social order, with military service being the ultimate goal for everyone, regardless of their class. There were three primary social classes in Sparta: the aristocratic Spartiates, the middle-class Perioeci, and the lower-class Helots. The Spartiates were the elite native Spartans who held full legal and political rights. They were the only ones allowed to participate in politics, serve as military leaders, and, of course, fight in the army. Some of them could trace their ancestry back to the founding of Sparta itself. In essence, the Spartiates were the ruling class. Next in the hierarchy were the Perioeci, often foreigners or non-Spartan natives, who played vital roles in Sparta's economy. These men were the merchants, blacksmiths, and craftsmen who made the weapons and armor for the army. They were allowed to own land, learn literacy, and pay taxes, but they did not have the same rights as the Spartiates. They did, however, serve in the military, though not as warriors. At the bottom of the social ladder were the Helots, who worked as farmers and servants. The Spartans despised the Helots, and for good reason. The Helots had originally lived in the area south of Sparta, known as Helos. As Sparta expanded its borders, it took control of the region and conquered the Helots. Most of the Helots were killed, while others were enslaved. The Helots had no rights and were treated harshly by their Spartan masters. In fact, it was sometimes legal for a Spartan to kill a Helot, even if the Helot had gained their freedom. The system was brutal, and no Helot ever felt truly secure. With the Helots handling much of the labor, Spartan women had more free time. Instead of worrying about household chores, they could focus on athletic pursuits. Spartan women were known for their strength, participating in events that tested their athletic abilities, from wrestling to throwing. These events were often part of larger festivals like gymnopedia, where men and women competed in athletic contests and war dances, often performing these feats in the nude. The Gymnopedia festival began in 668 BC and was designed not just to show off athletic skills, but to prepare Spartan women for their role as mothers. Their physical training ensured they would bear strong, healthy children to carry on Sparta's legacy. So, what do you think? Could you handle the harsh lifestyle of a Spartan? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to check out more videos on the Reality Threads channel.